It is a time of great celebration here at Flat Squirrel Productions. On October 20th, the My Comic Shop Country Kickstarter campaign was successfully funded. All season on the podcast, you've been hearing about the stores on My Comic Shop Odyssey. Next year, the journey continues in a new documentary film called My Comic Shop Country. Thank you to everyone who pledged and helped make this happen. I am immensely grateful for everyone's support, and I can't wait to get to work and make this movie. In the meantime, be sure to keep tuning in to My Comic Shop History and to Flat Squirrel Tales Beyond My Comic Shop. There are still 3 episodes of each series left this season. No flat squirrels here. Welcome to My Comic Shop History. I am your host, Anthony Desiato. This time around, my travels around the country bring me to Chicago, Illinois. I am here at the Eisner Award-winning Challengers Comics and Conversation, and I am joined by the store's co-owner, Patrick Brower. Patrick, welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks very much for having me. Thanks for coming to Chicago.
Yeah, this is actually part 1 of a 2-part Windy City episode. So we're kicking things off with you, and then we're going to have another Chicago installment next time around. So I'm excited to be here and explore some comic shops.
You know, there used to be a chain called Windy City Comics in Chicago, but they didn't make it.
Oh, that's too bad. Well, sadly, a fate that, befalls many comic shops. Yeah. But you guys are going strong. So if my math is correct, this coming year, 2018, will mark your 10-year anniversary.
Yes, it'll be our 10th anniversary, yes.
Congratulations. That's
Thank you.
Small feat.
Yeah, we never really thought it would. I mean, we hoped it would get there, but we couldn't say for sure. And at this point, who knows? That's 6 months away.
Well, I think you guys will make it. So this is one of the final episodes of My Comic Shop History Season 3. I've spoken to a lot of retailers in different parts of the country. One theme that has emerged is what really seems to be a concerted effort on the part of at least the stores that I've spoken to really engage in proactive community building and be places that are welcoming and places of inclusion. And you've kind of taken it really to the next level because it's in the name of your store.
Sure, yeah.
And I know from what I've read and what I've heard about you that it's a conscious choice that the store is called Challengers Comics and Conversation and not Challengers Comics and Collectibles.
Right. Well, we don't like looking at comics or anything we sell as a collectible. We want you to buy a thing because you want that thing. You want to engage with that thing. But to put the conversation in the name, so many people that we know that shop here don't really have people in their lives that are comic fans. And as a human being, anything that you're into, whether it be comics or a television show or a sports team or whatever, part of the fun of being engaged with this thing is being able to talk to other people who like it. And if you don't have anyone in your life who likes comics, we want you to know that you can talk about comics here. I've been a comics reader my entire life for the most part. And in grade school and junior high, there were maybe 1 or 2 other kids that read comics. And you find those people, like you gravitate toward those people, but it wasn't as prevalent back then as it is now. So we want people to know that this is forgive the phrase, a safe space to talk about anything related to the things that we sell. We occasionally get someone coming in and say, I'd like my conversation, please. And then we say, well, you just had it. It was very short.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
So I want to get much more into your mission statement and what you guys do here, but I have to tell you, and I know listeners can't experience this through our auditory podcast, your store is the best smelling shop that I have been to.
Thank you. That is that's on purpose. The secret is simply Glade plugins.
Well, they do the trick, sir.
We know what comic stores smell like. I remember a lot of early comic stores in my life smelled like my grandmother's attic, which is where, like, she had a library in her attic. So warm, pulped paper or newsprint, or, you leave a newspaper in a car for a couple days, that smell. And that's what all comic stores smell like. It's not a bad smell, but it's an off-putting smell if you're a new reader or new to the industry. So it was, from the very beginning, it was, it's just apple, cinnamon, Glade plugins. That's all. That's our scent. That's our signature scent.
It took me a moment though, because I came in and I think it registered to a certain extent, but I didn't fully make the connection. I'm like, wait a minute, like it really smells good in here.
That's one of the best compliments we get, and we get it more often than we ever thought we would, was, hey, it smells good in here. Which I think more people are surprised that it doesn't smell bad in here. I think that's what they're actually saying.
We've discussed this on the podcast before, but at Alternate Realities, I guess it was more or less the opposite. The store didn't smell great.
Yeah.
And there was a particular period of time, a very dark hour, when there was a dead rodent tucked away in a hidden corner of the store, and it was very unpleasant.
Yeah,
and I think off-putting certainly to us, and I would imagine to customers as well. So, it was literally a breath of fresh air coming in here. And so before you came, and as I was setting up, I had a chance to speak with the store's co-owner, Dal.
Mm-hmm. Dal Bush.
And
W. Dal Bush.
That's right. And he said something that was apparent to me through my research, but it was great to hear from him, and I would like to, pick your brain about it too. He was really getting at the idea that, what you guys do here, one of the main objectives is to challenge the notion of what a comic shop is or what it can be.
Yeah, I don't know that I would use that phrasing, but if you want me to dig in a little bit deeper, the name Challengers, which Dal came up with it, and he had a short list of names when we were thinking, but as soon as he said Challengers, I'm yes. Because on the one hand, he and I both had full-time jobs elsewhere. So it was a personal challenge to us to leave the comfort of a steady paycheck and to start our own business. But it was a challenge to see if we could do it, but also we want to challenge readers and customers to find the store and to try something they haven't read before and to pick up a book that we recommend just because we recommend it. And we want to be challenged by our readers as well.
So it's not that you're big challengers of the unknown fans.
Actually, the funny part was when Dal came up with the name, and it was right around the time that New Pornographers had an album out called Challengers. And I think that may have influenced him a little bit, although a lot of older customers think it's space shuttle related, which it is not. I immediately envisioned the store color as purple, and Dow just said no. So that was the Challengers jumpsuit.
Gotcha. One other thing that really struck me about the store is the red and white color scheme. It is very striking. How did you guys land on that?
Well, like I said, I wanted purple, and Dow said, no, it's red. And branding is important to us. We want to make sure that when people are in the store, they don't say, I'm at the comic shop. They say, I'm at Challengers. So to us, that means having a theme, and that goes down to the colors that we wear as well. It could be any colors. Like the red doesn't simplify anything specific, but we do call it Challengers Red. But so often people come in and ask if we're part of a chain because we look like part of a chain. One of the things that we do, all of our signs are printed. Whether we print them here or get them printed by a printing company in the neighborhood, we don't have handwritten signs. Any sign that goes up is printed and looks professional, so people just assume it's like mass-produced, or I think that's what gives an impression of us being part of a chain. But yeah, we definitely wanted to have a noticeable color scheme because so many stores don't have that kind of identity, and branding is important.
Yeah, I have to say, and I'd have to give this a little bit more thought, and I don't want to sell any of the other stores that I've been to short, but I do think this is the most, aesthetically speaking, the most distinct, and I think the color scheme really contributes to that.
We worked at other stores in the past, and it was always a hodgepodge. It was, we found these racks in the trash, or we bought these from some clothing store that was going out of business, and it never looked like it fit together. And we wanted to make sure everything we did looked like it belonged.
Now, you said that people sometimes assume that you're a part of a chain. Does that ever go against you? Because sometimes people are a little averse to chain shopping.
And sometimes they don't believe us when we say we're not. And we always take it as a negative, but it's not ever meant that way. It's sometimes you can think, oh, you're saying this because you don't think we could do this by ourselves. Like we need help doing this, but we didn't.
Yeah. No, yeah. I mean, I think that's the right way to take it.
Yeah, I don't think anybody means anything bad by it.
Right.
I think it means where's another one of these we can go to.
Yeah. It's funny. It's going back to the smell. Such a contrast as far as the signs, for example, with Alternate Realities, where all of our signs were handwritten. I mean, well, some were typed, but most of them were handwritten, and it's definitely a different vibe for sure. I mean, I think the handwritten signs can contribute, at least in part, to a little bit of a store's charm.
Sure.
Do you feel like you lose any of that by having everything professionally printed, or is it far outweighed by what you get?
It's funny you say that, because one of our favorite negative Yelp reviews was, "There's no comic shop funk," to which we think is a massive compliment, but from this review's point of view, it didn't feel like walking into a basement or an 80s comic shop or something. And as far as, I would rather it look professional than not. So, I mean, if that's what someone's looking for, I'm sorry, we don't have that.
It's interesting you say that, because that was always a frustration of ours at Alternate Realities, where it did have more of that old school vibe. It was very messy. It was cluttered. There were a lot of boxes to go through. And for those of us who worked and shopped there, we always wanted the store to be a little bit different, a little more streamlined and organized, neat and clean. And I think others, or at least some others, felt the same way. But then there were customers who we talked to who liked it, because they saw it as an opportunity for discovery. So yeah, you're always going to have different kinds of fans who are looking for a certain type of experience.
Well, one of the things you said about the way you guys wanted it to be as employees was a way we wanted to feel where we used to work. But once you own it and it's an immediate reflection on you, that's when you change it and you think, no, we'll do things this way.
Yeah, so you actually did, so for all the talking that I did about Alternate Realities and the podcast and everything, I never really put my money where my mouth is, and you did. So where were you working before this?
It was a chain of stores in the area, and I'd been working there for actually 17 and a half years. And I hired a very young 12-year-old Dal Bush to work for 3 hours a week in like 1991. So that's how I met Dal. He was a kid who was coming in and buying Marvel Universe trading cards. And I thought, yeah, this kid could help out. He could do some stuff. I never wanted to own a store. Working where I used to work and seeing the headaches and all the tax issues and all the paperwork and everything else, I thought, that's not for me. I'll just do it. But there were way too many things that both Dal and I wanted to do in the stores, because as our tenures increased, we got more responsibilities. The chain grew. There was a point where I was running the number 1 store and Dal was running the number 2 store. And at the same time, Dal had a full-time office job that he was working, a night job, and he would do literally 2 8-hour shifts every day. And those other stores may have been micromanaged to death, and you could easily work hard all day and then go home feeling like you're not a good employee because you constantly get yelled at. So after way too many of those types of encounters, Dal just said, I don't need this. I have another job. I have a better paying job elsewhere. And he left. And after a few months, he came back to me and said, maybe it's not me. Maybe there is a better way to do a store. And at that point, I had previously been offered to buy into the store we used to work at, and I thought about it but wound up not doing it. And like I said before, I never wanted to own a store. But one of your best friends comes to you and says, what if? You have to try. You have to try.
Would you rather not say the name of the chain? I don't know how many chains there are in Chicago.
Do you have any cricket noises you could drop in right there?
I've been to one of the Graham Cracker Comics locations. I don't know if that's the chain that you're referring to.
I've never heard of them. What?
Well,
that sounds like a treat.
Yeah. Well, I'm not from here, but I was here last year, and I forget offhand which location it was, but I did visit one of the Graham Cracker locations, and I don't ever like to judge a store based on one particular encounter, because I know from working at a store there are a lot of things that go on, and I didn't have an overly negative experience. There was nothing horrible about it, but I went there. It was a Wednesday, so that's a busy day, but I was in there, for probably close to an hour, and nobody said a word to me. And in fairness, I like to think if I had a question, I had approached them, they would have helped me.
Sure.
But I don't know. It was just a little surprising to not have anybody come over in that time. Again, it was just one particular instance. I don't know if that's always what it's like, and that's only one of the locations. I don't know. But that was the one and only experience that I've had there.
Our philosophy here is we greet you when you come in. If you have an immediate question, we'll answer it. if you look like you know what you're doing, we'll leave you alone. But if you're looking around for like 10 or 15 minutes and you don't seem to have anything, we'll come over and be like, hey, is there anything you're looking for? We give you space, but also it's not like Home Depot where you can never find somebody when you want somebody. There's always somebody behind the counter. You'll be able to tell who works here or not.
Yeah, for sure. This is another theme that's emerged, and I guess it goes towards that community building, is the art of the personal recommendation. Because I've heard this from a number of stores. Actually, the previous episode of the season featured Sarah and Patrick Titus, the owners at the comic book shop in Wilmington, Delaware. Yeah. And they're huge on that, on making those personal recommendations. And it's really great to hear that from retailers. And I look back on my own experience behind the counter, and I feel like I probably missed out on opportunities to connect people with books. The recommendations happen. I feel like they happen more with the people I knew, the regulars. Like we would just talk about what we were reading, and
sure.
Maybe I would turn them on to something. But the person who just came in cold, I mean, I would say, is there anything I can help you with? But
right.
I don't know that I went as far as to say, hey, did you see Spider-Man: Homecoming? What did you like about that?
Yeah.
What are the types of stories that you enjoy? I don't know that I ever really took that step. It's cool to hear that retailers are really making that effort.
Yeah, that's one of the best things of what we do is when you say to somebody, hey, have you ever read Kill or Be Killed? Or have you ever read any of the Brubaker and Phillips books? And if they say, I don't know what you're talking about, and like you put the book in their hand, you describe it a little bit, but the best feeling is when they come back and say, that book was amazing. What's next? What else should I get? And one of the things that I think good at is I don't follow somebody and like talk about everything they're doing, but if I can see them and they're my line of sight and they pick up a book I like, I will yell from across the store, oh my God, that book is so great. Then I'll walk over and say what I like about it and things like that. And I know there's retailers that have like a go-to list of, here's these 10 books we recommend. But for us, it's always just like the simple question of, is there any episodic TV you watch regularly? Not sitcoms. But, if you say, like, Lost, we'll be like, oh, all right, that gives us a direction to point you towards or what have you. And with streaming services, it could be literally any show that's ever existed, or if you're watching on YouTube or whatever. But, I mean, it's one simple question to boil down a little bit of an opinion as to tastes and likes.
Speaking of recommendations, I think I came across an interview of yours where you guys were talking about how Saga brought so many people into the store. Mm-hmm. And I was wondering, I don't know if this is something that you can really answer from this side of it, but like how are people finding out about Saga in the first place?
Oh man, that's the eternal question. How does anybody find out about anything? Like word of mouth, news sites. But I mean, if you're new to comics, you're not going to be reading CBR or
right.
Newsarama. It's got to be a friend. Like you have to have in some way heard of it from somewhere. And hopefully if it's a book that's that far reaching, it transcends normal comic sites and goes to mainstream news sites or what have you. But yeah, we honestly don't know. One of the things we wish we could ask every person is, how did you find our store? What made you come in today? But that's weird to ask strangers. Like, not what brought you in, but like, how did you find us specifically? One of the things I like so far about everybody you've talked to in this current season is we know all of them, or we know of all of them. And I've never met Sarah Titus, but she's very active on some retailer online groups. And I feel like I have a good idea of who she is. And I think that she's a great retailer and a total benefit to the retail community. And I like hearing like all the names you reach out, I'm like, that you've hit of stores this time, or you're going to hit. Like, I know those people. I love that we have a community of people that care enough about the industry that we talk to each other. And as far as recommendations go, it goes retailer to retailer as well. Like, this from being on the other side of the counter. There's almost 3,000 comic shops in America right now. And that means there's 3,000 ways to do the same thing. And everybody has a take on it, and nobody's way is really wrong. It's just what works for them. But it's so great to be able to have resources to talk to those other people and to see, well, what would you do in this situation?
Yeah, that's the thing. And I'm sure there are plenty of retailers who are just kind of off doing their own thing. But, it really has been cool to find this community of retailers. And even in these episodes, you guys are all referencing each other. Yeah. And I'm hearing about these online the message boards and everything. It's cool that exists.
It didn't exist where we used to work. We were in a bubble, and we're kept away from everybody else. But as soon as we opened Challengers, it's like the other stores in the city came to us and said, hey, welcome to Chicago, welcome to retail. They may not have known our pedigree, but they were all like, hey, let's all work together. And we do. There's stores that we, like Dal and I try to have dinner at least once a month with another retailer, and we split between others throughout the city, and we share want lists, and it's just good to have, again, that resource. But it's also good to be able to have there's a store in the city, Dark Tower, that is the exact opposite of everything we do. Like, they are they have the completely different philosophy. They're night and day from us. But I love talking to Mark, their owner, because I want his perspective, and he's like the store that we swap stuff with most often.
Yeah, that's very cool. And I mean, one thing I've learned is, I think it's important for retailers to be able to respond to the needs of their particular market. So, I mean, like you said, what works for one store might not work for another, but It's interesting to get the different perspectives. Going back to the opening of the store, obviously Chicago's a major city, so maybe this wasn't so much of an issue. But given that there is this large graham cracker comics chain, and I mean, the store is not wanting for comic shops generally, was there any fear in that respect as far as opening another store in the city?
What we did was we took a map of the city and marked off where every comic store that existed currently was, and we looked at the areas that didn't have stores. And there were 3 main areas that stood out to us, but location and price made it be the Bucktown neighborhood that we're in. But our goal was to not be where anybody else was. We weren't looking to step on toes. I have a long-held philosophy that if, let's say, Challengers is doing $1 million a year in sales, and you open up a new alternate reality right across the street, the combined total of those 2 stores will be well over $1 million. We won't make $1 million anymore, but the more stores, the more money. Like, anytime a store goes under, it's painful for the industry because a large percentage of those people just quit reading comics. So the more stores, the better for everybody, just, not across the street from each other.
Right. I read that you said when you guys opened, in terms of the clientele that you were expecting, you were anticipating more of the traditional old school comic book fan, older male customers.
I'd been working downtown for almost a decade, and that was heavily mainstream superheroes, Big Two, that kind of stuff. And we're certainly not opposed to other types of comics. And if you look at the comics that I read as a kid versus what I read now, it's like night and day, which I've already used that phrase before, but it's still appropriate. So we set it up to be, and Dal was working a major suburban store, so he had his idea of what his client base were, and they kind of matched, because let's face it, they were in the same chain. So we modeled our store after like those sales numbers and those books, but we quickly found out that this is a much more diverse and culture-rich area, and that not that we were going to just carry Marvel and DC, but relying on just those was not the way to go.
Right. So when you started to see more families, more women, more kids coming in, what were the changes that you made to cater more to that more diverse group?
Bringing in just more diverse books and working with a lot more diverse creators. A big thing for Challengers is always events. And we're not just gonna, we didn't start with just having superhero artists in. Our first signing ever was Chris Burnham, the artist on the Images Then Nixon's Pals with Joe Casey. And that is not a standard superhero book. So from the beginning, our first event ever wasn't superhero related, but we just like showcasing things outside of the regular sales charts.
Right. Well, it's interesting to hear that, because I think, based on my experience at Alternate Realities, if I were opening a new store, I'd probably have a similar expectation, because the majority of our customers were essentially middle-aged men.
Yeah.
But it's encouraging, and I've heard this from so many retailers, that there are so many people and different kinds of people reading comics.
It's there's more new people in the industry now. It's just that we don't have as many of the older people in the industries. And one of the things we learned right away was that people that get into comics now, they don't care about publisher. They don't know the difference between Image or Dark Horse, or whether it be back issues of cross-gen comics or Aftershock. They don't care. They just want the book that they want. So we used to break things up by publisher because that's the way we always did it. We used to have our graphic novels separated by Marvel, DC, Vertigo, Image.
As we did as well.
Right. And we even had we used to, back issues to be separated where we used to work. But we're like, no, we're just everything by title or by character. Like we keep Action under S for Superman or Amazing under S for Spider-Man, that kind of thing. Because that's what people want. Nobody is going to look in the Image section for Walking Dead. They're going to look under W for Walking Dead. And people didn't even know coming in that comics could be periodicals or collections. And it doesn't matter if they don't know that. Who cares? They just know the format they want to buy it. So we're not going to be like, well, you have to buy the single issues if you want. No, they buy it the way you want to buy it. If you want to buy in single issues, we have that option. If you want to wait for the collections, we have that option. And a lot of the newer readers coming in are collection readers. They are just people that want those books, and that's fine.
Yeah, I was going to ask about that, and I know it sounds like such a pedestrian question, but, singles or trades. But I remember in the early to mid-2000s when, trade paperback collections became much more common, because prior to that, big key storylines were collected, but it wasn't an automatic, and now almost everything is collected.
Right.
So, yeah, I was curious what kind of trends you're seeing. I mean, what do people tend to favor? Because I got to the point, and I wrestled with this. The collector in me and the reader in me really had a war over this.
Sure.
Because the collector in me wanted to have the single issues, wanted to have every issue in a run and have that short box of bagged and boarded books, but the reader in me preferred the reading experience of a trade paperback. No ads and the complete story. Read it all in one sitting. It looks great on a bookshelf. It was really a tug of war, and it was something I wrestled with for a long time. What are you finding?
We're finding that it fluctuates a little bit. Like 2 years ago, we would have said that graphic novels are selling better than single-issue comics. Now it looks like single-issue comics are selling better than graphic novels, but we're not talking leaps and bounds. We're talking incremental percentages, and it's considered half and half. It's split half and half. As a personal reader, I've been buying and reading comics since I was 5, because I have a brother 6 years older than me who was reading. So we have this massive single issue collection. We don't buy the singles anymore either. I mean, the biggest problem I think for a long-time reader is not I can't afford it. It's I don't know where to put it. There's too much of it. And it just becomes a point of no other magazine that I get, like Sports Illustrated or Entertainment Weekly, I don't save those. I read those and I recycle those. But I get enjoyment out of those. But comics are a thing that you keep, you save, you, in theory, will reread, although I have yet to actually reread. And I used to have a massive personal graphic novel collection, but I have pruned that down just because, A, I don't like moving it, and B, it's like I've never pulled this book off a shelf, not even to dust it. So it clearly means that I don't have to own it. But people getting into comics now don't really gravitate toward the single issues. They like the collections. And people that I'm reading comics for the majority of their life, they prefer the single issues. And we do have some people that do both, or buy the singles and then try to eBay them out when the trade comes out. So they have the trade, so they want to have the collection. But it becomes a point where, as we're moving to a society of experience over physicality, you want the experience of having read a book, but you don't necessarily have to own it. So that's what we have to wrestle with as shop owners, is people maybe not needing to own it. And honestly, whenever somebody comes in and says, do you have this? I need this. I like to say, you don't need anything we carry. There's nothing in the store you need. This is not food or shelter, but we're happy to get it for you.
Yeah, that trend is interesting, and it tracks when you consider really just the direction everything seems to be moving in. We're not a society anymore, certainly, of delayed gratification. I mean, everybody wants everything.
Yeah, it's immediate.
As soon as possible. And you look at Netflix, I mean, they release their shows every episode at once. So somebody who's used to binging Netflix shows, if they come into a store and they're like, oh, I want to read this comic book series, and you tell them, well, it comes out once a month, and you have to wait a year to read this 12-issue storyline.
It's only 20 pages.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like that wouldn't compute. But if you can say, here you go, here's the entire thing in one chunk, that would make sense to them.
Yeah. We often get the question of, are there more of these? Because people may be put off by, let's say, starting Walking Dead, knowing that they're on volume 28, but then other people want to know there's so much more after it, but other people don't want the commitment.
I want to circle back to this whole collector versus fan reader issue because it is very interesting to me. But I just want to ask, and you don't have to give me specific percentages or anything like that, but just generally speaking, as far as what you sell in terms of Marvel and DC versus independent stuff, what is the general breakdown of what you guys do?
Well, I can't give you percentages because I don't have that in front of me, and that is more of a Dal question than a me question. But honestly, Marvel is still our biggest sales. We break our books down by Marvel, DC, everybody else, and that includes like the all ages book. This is just single issues. We don't track the graphic novels based off of subcategory. We do in the system, but it's a subcategory, not like it's graphic novels, then Marvel, DC, Image, Dark Horse, whatever. But the comics are separated. Marvel, DC, everybody else has their own. So in that, it's usually Marvel on top almost every day. It's rare that DC beats them. And honestly, it's DC and Independence fight for second place, but Independence literally is everything not Marvel or DC. So that includes Image, that includes every company.
And Image is massive. They have so many titles.
Yes, but their sales are the opposite of massive. They haven't had a saga-like hit in it, Paper Girls, but nothing else comes close. And current Image comics, regardless of quality, because there are some really great books that are criminally underlooked, we don't get more than 20 of a new Image title, maybe, like tops. And that doesn't count like Kill or Be Killed, which is a high B level Image book for us, and like Southern Bastards. But new things coming out from Image nowadays don't have that, it's an Image #1 to it like it did like 3 or 4 years ago.
I wanted to get your take on something that came up in a previous episode. I don't know if you're familiar with Menachem Lukens. Yeah, okay.
Yeah. Escape Pod.
Escape Pod, yep. So he was on the show.
I can do this all day.
Yeah, this is awesome.
I really can't.
So he was on the show a little bit earlier in the season, and much like your store, and I want to get into your store more, but in a similar way, his shop is very much focused on books.
Yeah.
Single issues and trades. But he really caters to that independent comic scene, and the opinion he expressed was that shops might want to consider not giving so much display space to the mainstream superhero stuff, the DC and Marvel books, because people are someone who comes in wanting Batman, they're gonna find Batman. You don't necessarily need a display devoted to it, but if you use that retail space, that real estate, to showcase an independent title, something that might not otherwise be on someone's radar, that can really make a difference and maybe even move the needle a little bit. Where do you fall on something like that?
Well, it's interesting because we did things a certain way for 9 years, and then back in May of this year, we completely changed it. We used to have a long wall that went the whole length of our store. New Comics went down a wall, around a corner, and then straight down to the other end. And we would change how it would be separated. We would have like Image at the front, Marvel in the back. Maybe people walk to Marvel. We would have, depending on, because the way the walls jut out, there's some spacing issues, so we would put things differently. But this year, after Free Comic Book Day, we just decided that looking at our sales numbers, our individual single issue comic sales, 90% of the sales come in the first week. And we would give a bigger title like 3 or 4 spaces. Well, what we did now, and what we do now, is we collapsed everything to alphabetical by title. Everybody gets one spot. And then we have a new release section, which we've never had before. This is new for us, where we have the room for 70 spaces of new titles per week. Some week it's difficult. Some week there's like 77 or 78 new titles that we're getting. Some weeks there's 50-something, so there's a lot of spreading around. But after they move from the New This Week wall, they just go back on the main wall mixed in, so every book, every title gets the same square footage, one space. And all our graphic novels are shelved like bookstores, spine out. So again, they get up as much space as they take up from their thickness, not from we don't have a Batman section. We do because it's under the letter B, but we don't do call outs or things like that.
So now you said this was a recent shift that you made?
Earlier this year.
Okay. And what effect have you seen so far?
Well, we did notice all along that, like, if someone was coming in looking for a Green Arrow, they'd be buying the new Green Arrow. They wouldn't be buying the last 4 issues of Green Arrow or whatever. But if you want them, we still have them. And what we would do is if we had, let's say, 3 spaces for a book, we'd have the newest issue on the far right, the second newest issue next to it on the left, and then everything else behind it. People didn't necessarily know that that last pile was all the older issues. And this way, if we just put everything into one pile, people are more inclined to look behind the front issue when it's one pile than they would if it was spread out some more. Because if they see it spread out and they see, oh, well, this is a single issue, this is a single issue, I assume this pile here is all that same single issue. So that makes people look a little bit more. But honestly, it freed up more room for us because we were able to take all of our action figures out of the room that we're in and put them at the end of where the comics used to be, and then give this whole wall right here next to us was action figures. Now it's more all ages stuff. And building the future is the most important job that we have because we don't need to cater so much to the comic readers of today as we do tomorrow. And, you know, it's an old saying in any industry, but get them while they're young. Like, you hook a comic reader when they're a kid, they'll want to keep reading. They may not be reading single issues, but they'll be reading. Yeah,
you and I got in at the same age. I was 5 years old.
Excellent.
As well.
Yeah.
So we are in the sidekick section of the store.
It's basically the all ages version of Challengers. It's the same kind of layout that we have in Challengers, but just smaller. And everything in it is all ages. It's not the kids' room because that would imply it's just for kids, but this is for everybody. Like, we like to think that it's like up to 10 years old is where you go in here before you graduate to the main floor.
Gotcha. So let's talk more about the main floor and what you guys do here. So again, going back to this idea of maybe challenging the notion of what you might think of when you think of the traditional comic book store. So we talked about the red and white color scheme. Mm-hmm. We talked about how great it smells. You guys are dressed impeccably.
Well, we want you to be able to know that, I said before, who works there. And this is a business, and this is our business, and this reflects us. We want to be professional. Anybody can wear jean shorts and a Captain Marvel t-shirt. And that's what we'll do at home. This is a business. Yeah, I mean, you guys are in button-downs and vests. Yeah.
And again, coming from Acme Comics in North Carolina, Jermaine, he has his fedora and his blazer. Again, I wonder if this is becoming a little bit of a trend where these retailers have quite the fashion sense.
I love the fact that when we opened Challengers 10 years ago, there were a lot of things that we did that other stores didn't do. And there's no new ideas in comic retailing, and there's no new ideas in entertainment. And if we have something that works for you and you want to use it, use it. Don't even ask, just do it. But we put out, we had a couch and chairs. We still have the chairs now. The couch didn't make it. But I mean, it's 10 years of a lot of use. But we encourage people to sit and read stuff. And stores didn't do that. At the time we opened, we had Scotty Young's art table set up for anybody to come in and sit down and draw if they wanted to. And stores didn't do that. There's a lot of things other things, but specifically those that we did that now everybody does, and it's commonplace. And it's great. Like, I literally, most of the furniture, not the shelving, but the furniture is from IKEA because it's affordable and you can get it all in red. And I love it when I'll go in and see literally those exact chairs in other stores. And it's like, yeah, because they're affordable, they're transportable, and they're sturdy. But I love seeing Jermaine always dressed up. And they do a lot of stuff with the artist Chris Giarusso. He did our windows.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it's just good ideas come together, that we used to we tried a level of graphic novel dividers that would stick out in between the titles. So you're looking at this wall full of books, but you could at least see, oh, there's the word Batman. So I can go there for Batman and have the basic ones. And I'd put up the prototype online, and Jermaine was the first guy to say, hey, can we do that? I'm like, yeah, man, absolutely. Anytime you want. You never have to ask.
And they do.
Yeah.
So you've described...
And we don't, because it didn't work for us. People would be like, where's Walking Dead? I'm like, the word... Never mind.
Oh, yeah. I mean, well, we could do a whole thing on pet peeves, but that would always drive me nuts when you would tell somebody what's alphabetical. It's like just a blank Blank stare back.
I was like, I had a comment recently. I'm like, I refuse to show you an adult where the letter T starts on the shelf.
Right? Oh, man. Drove us nuts.
Yeah.
So you have described your store as a pure comic shop, a comics first store.
Yeah.
And I think the percentage I saw somewhere was 90% of the store are comics and trades.
Yeah, it's actually, it used to be more than that, but we didn't do action figures before, but we ourselves love action figures. And one of the reasons we didn't stock a lot of action figures is because they're so cheap at Toys R Us and Target. We have Targets everywhere around us and a Toys R Us just up the block. But people still would come to us for things. So we thought, all right, if people are asking for these, we'll get them. And, we want to buy them ourselves, so it's easier for us. So we have expanded our toy section. And I was telling you before we started recording, several game stores in the area have all closed recently. So we started carrying 2 square feet worth of games, Dungeons and Dragons and escape room games and Munchkin, just very basic things. We are not gamers. One of the reasons we don't normally carry games is because we don't want to be disingenuous, and we want to be able to help you. And if you grab the game Pandemic and say, "Oh, how is this?" I don't know. I've never played it, and I don't like carrying things I don't know anything about, with the exception of Magic cards, because everybody asks for Magic cards, and most of our employees play Magic. It's just that Dal and I don't personally.
It's another theme. That's come up a number of times, and I'm in the same boat. I was never into it. And it's funny, there's a store where I live that reached out to me recently, and they're like, essentially like, oh, how come we haven't been on the show? And it's like, it's nothing personal. They're primarily a gaming store. It's like, it's nothing personal. It's just, that's just not my bag. I don't, I guess it would be interesting to explore maybe in the podcast, but I don't know. That's never been where my heart is in this hobby.
And honestly, it's not a thing I do, but I had a very long conversation recently with Corey Cassoni from Toonhound, and we have very educated fans that are gaming fans who have said, hey, look at these games, or I was just at Gen Con, here's what people are talking about, that kind of thing. And we're dipping our toes in, as I like to say, and we have moderate success so far, but nothing that is making us say, oh, we're going to increase our game section or whatever. Just we'll see how it goes, and we'll see what people want. And also, as a self-admitted non-gamer, I may not make the best choices for what to carry, but I'm the guy that does the ordering. So like I said, I listen to all these people and I try what they're saying, but that's what people are telling me. That's not what my market is telling me.
Right. And that is always important, to be responding to who you're working with.
Yeah.
In terms of product diversification, do you feel like you guys are diversified enough? Because, I know what the margins are like on the single issues and the trades. I would imagine you need to be moving a substantial volume of them to really be making money.
Yeah, there's such a thing as too much diversification. So we keep a very tight rein on what we restock. And that is Dal's department, is every week when we generate what we've sold for the week, we look through and say, can we sell this again, or did we sell our maximum, or what levels do we set the computer to tell us, okay, well, you're down to 5 copies of Saga Volume 1, do we need more or not, that kind of thing. As far as other diversity goes, we have a really large local section, but they're all in boxes. They're all in pull-out drawer boxes and things, so you have to dig, because we used to give them a shelf area, or like an 8-foot shelf section, and they don't sell. And people keep bringing us local books, which is great. We love having them, but the margins on those are usually not great, and they're all usually a lot more expensive than regular comics because people have to make them in very small quantities and make them themselves, and we don't sell them. They don't move, and I feel bad every time somebody comes in and says, how did we do? We get out their book and look it up and go over and say, oh, you haven't sold me. But we have a lot of local books. We just don't have, we're also in the same neighborhood as a really great zine store called Quimby's that has probably everything we have and more of it. So that could be a reason, but it's just that the mainstream comic fans, as diverse as they could be in their indie comic reading, don't necessarily go for the DIY zine-made comics of local creators.
Gotcha. And I know you have back issues, and they're all 99 cents.
Yeah.
And I think this points to this idea that we were getting at earlier about nurturing comic book fans and readers versus cultivating collectors.
Yeah.
And so I guess just bear with me with this, because this was kind of a larger idea that I wanted to get at. As I've been talking to retailers and to the non-initiated as well about this project that I'm doing, one thing that people keep asking is, what about digital comics? Has that been hurting stores? And it's only come up a little bit in the season, and the sense that I've gotten, and I could be mistaken, but the sense I've gotten is that digital comics haven't hurt stores all that much, at least not yet. And I would assume that maybe part of the reason why is that collector mentality, that people are used to having and owning the physical copies, and they want to have all of the issues in the run and all of that. I don't know if that's, maybe
Sure.
sure there are other factors, but I would have to imagine that collector mentality is a part of it. So I guess the question I have is, in not nurturing those collecting habits, and I'm not saying you should, but in not nurturing that, does it potentially run the risk of somebody, they really enjoy reading it, but they're just as happy to read the digital copy because they don't feel they need to own it, and then it hurts the in-store business? I mean, is that a concern at all?
It's not a concern, because the easy answer is we'll never know if that's the case. When people say, are digital comics hurting you? I don't know. If somebody's buying all their books digitally, I don't know that.
True.
All I know is they're not buying from me. Like, nobody ever says, hey, I'm not buying from you anymore because I'm getting all my books digitally. Like, I know some people that do both. I know people that buy some books digitally and buy some books physically. But I really think where digital is going to come into play is the future, where you have young readers engaging with it only in a digital capacity.
Right.
And if that's how you learn, that's how you progress. You're never going to step backwards. Nobody ever bought a compact disc and said, you know what, how does this sound on 8-track? That's what I want to know. Like, it doesn't go backwards. And comics are lucky because we haven't had that progression of format like the music industry has. We never went from reel-to-reel to records to 8-tracks to cassette tapes to CDs to mini discs to MP3s. Like, we just went single issue comics to digital. Like, that's the only two formats we have. And I know so many people that have tried digital and don't like the format. I don't like the format. I do a lot of digital reading for previews from publishers when they give us PDFs in advance, but I don't like reading on a device. I will read those on a computer screen because my computer monitor is very large, but the idea of reading it on my phone or on a tablet, no. And I know that a tablet is almost full screen, but it's too heavy, and you don't, it tells you how to read a book, and my eyes tell me how to read a book. I don't need a going panel to panel doesn't give you the full emphasis of what the creators are trying to say, because when an artist lays out a page, they're laying out a page. They're not laying out each individual panel. But I mean, again, we don't know where digital is buying. One of the things I've always wanted to know is, where are the digital sales coming from geographically? Is it rural areas that don't have comic stores, or is it major metropolitan cities that have plenty of stores? And since no publisher releases their stats, we'll never know.
It's like Netflix not releasing their ratings.
Yeah, exactly. We just know if a book is canceled, it's not doing well. And if a series is not renewed, it's not doing well. I've never been that worried about digital comics because, A, there's nothing we can do to stop it. And B, I mean, it's ultimately not the way the medium was made. But the more and more creators that produce the content digitally is adapting to that format. And I don't think comic stores will ever go away, but I think they may go the route of record stores at some point in the future, where you won't have as many of them, but they'll have so much stuff.
Right.
And I don't know that that is necessarily us, because the back issue market died in Chicago a long time ago. So many stores that relied on just back issues don't anymore. I mean, there are stores that do back issues, but there's more stores that do what we do now, which is they're all just one price. And I love it when somebody thinks they're getting a bargain in the back issues, because I want them to be happy. But at the same time, I just think I don't even know that's worth the dollar that we're charging, man.
Right.
I mean, worth is a quantifiable phrase in that situation, but
No, it's interesting. And I mean, I don't want to speak for you, but I would imagine that the goal would be that the conversation part of this is going to keep people coming back.
Right. We just had a conversation with another retailer who has a lot of people, what's it called? Showrooming. Like looking at a product on the shelf and then looking it up on Amazon and seeing what they charge for it, or getting the recommendations from the retailer and then going to buy it somewhere else. I don't think we have that happening, but like I don't actively see people looking things up on their phone, but I also don't necessarily see what they're looking up on their phone. I'm not spying on people when they're in the store. I'm not paying that close attention.
Right. Yeah, I mean, I would imagine it would be the most problematic in terms of trade paperbacks, because generally speaking, you can get them at a discount on something like Amazon.
Absolutely.
I mean, and that, to me, when people ask, like, oh, is digital a problem for stores? Again, I always usually say it's probably more Amazon that's the bigger problem. Definitely. And it's one, like, we don't do sales here. We do one sale a year. That's all. It's every February 6th through the 13th. It's called I Love You, But I've Chosen Comics, and it's 25% off everything, one time per year, because we don't want to devalue the product. We don't want you to think that this book is worth less than what they're charging for it, less than cover price. So any type of online discounting service which is saying, hey, this book isn't worth as much as that, like I think that sends the wrong message. I think it sends that, well, you know, it says it's $4, but it's really only worth $2.75 to me. No, it's worth $4 as far as the level of care put into this and the love put into it by the creators and the publishers. So we don't like the idea of devaluing the product that we have, and all of these services do that just to make a little bit more money than we do. Right. No, I understand. I mean, and so as far as, you know, in store here and not playing those collector games, again, you don't mark up the back issues.
Right.
I think I read somewhere you don't play the incentive cover game. No.
If we get a cover, incentive covers, we put them on the shelf at cover price. Like, and by get, I mean if we qualify for them. We don't go out of our way for them. Companies like IDW, if you meet the threshold, they just send it to you anyway. So they'll just go on the shelf.
Right. The ones where you can order as many as you want, where it's just like a 50-50. Do you order both covers, or will you?
We usually don't, just because in my experience that confuses people more than anything else. And especially since we no longer give multiple spaces to a book after first week of release, we don't want to stack two different covers of the same book together, because when someone's flipping through, they'll see two different covers and oftentimes just get it, not seeing that it's the same number. It doesn't happen often, but it happens more than we want it to. Right. But I mean, if somebody says, hey, can you always get me the B cover? Yeah, sure. But we don't give the choices, and we certainly don't account for people that want both covers, because that's almost unfathomable to us.
Yeah, so, I mean, on that note, do you find that there are any of the traditional old-school comic fan collectors who are put off by that at all? Because I just wonder, since we talk about all these things about, again, cultivating this next generation of readers and everything, and I just wonder, the more traditional fan, where do they fit into this?
Well, it's not like we won't get it for them if they ask. Like, if you're a club member and you want all the variant covers, yeah, we'll get them for you. Incentive-wise, we'll only get it for you if we qualify for it and nobody else asks first.
And again, continuing on this track of the old school collector, with the personal recommendations, do you find that type of customer, are they asking for recommendations? Are they receptive when you make recommendations? How do they typically
They're almost
respond?
always receptive, yeah.
That's cool.
Yeah, who doesn't like getting turned on to something?
Yeah.
A guy I used to work with at a different shop was one of these guys that was, you don't tell me what's good, I tell you what's good. Like, if this book was good, I would have known about it. So you can't tell me it's good. But he was great at recommending things to people. He was just bad at taking recommendations himself.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
A little bit of a tangent, but I saw you guys post something about this recently. Comic book spoilers in the news.
Yeah.
Which has really become a very common practice. When there's a big event, a big storyline development, the publishers will arrange a story with major publications, and the story will run before the issues are even in the stores.
Yep.
And I mean, I guess on the one hand, from their perspective, they want to generate buzz and interest and get people into the store to buy the books. But for the people who are reading and enjoying these, it is spoiling it for them. I mean, where do you guys land on that?
We're absolutely against it. It's a thing that Dal personally hates. Like, he had Marvel Legacy ruined for him just accidentally like looking at a headline too much.
Yeah, I mean, that was the most
And-
recent example
Yeah,
of this.
there's a more recent one. I knew the answer to the Catwoman proposal
Oh, okay.
before I read the single issue. The thing that we hate about that is not only does it ruin it for the longtime reader, but all it does is, if it is a sales boost, it's short term, because people will come in and say, do you have that one where this happens? And they buy it and they never come back. It goes back to the Amazing Spider-Man issues that President Obama were in.
Yep.
We sold a ton of those and nobody cared at all what it was. It was just a thing the news told them that Obama was in. It didn't bump Spider-Man sales numbers for the next issue in the slightest. And I want to say like 90% of the people that bought that book never read it. They just wanted it because they were told it was a thing where something happens and they could maybe resell it. It's literally just this weekend, it's the Szechuan sauce from McDonald's. And the majority of people that bought it to flip it. And they're all over eBay and going for ridiculous prices. But like, it's so few people are in it for the purity of the experience. And if you're a comic company and you have a thing that you have to spoil, that means you need people to buy it, but it never helps long term.
Yeah, I know. It is kind of tough to reconcile all of that. And I mean, again, the story typically will break the day the book comes out or the day before.
Usually the day before, yeah.
So it's not like it's even the type of thing where the story runs early enough where you can increase your, like people come in and ask you for it and you can say, I'll order you one.
Oh, well, the publishers will never tell retailers what's happening because they can't trust retailers, because retailers will spoil it. 100% retailers will spoil it. Marvel and DC used to have programs where they would send out copies of next week's comics a week early.
Oh, listen.
The first looks and the sneak peeks.
I remember that. That was right when I started working at the store. That was one of the best parts about working at a comic shop. I got to see next week's books ahead of time. It was great.
And now, because we have the final order cutoffs where we can adjust our numbers 3 weeks before a book comes out, publishers work around that by doing a lot of biweekly books and a lot of weekly stories that we still don't have enough time to catch up on. And it's just a question of not being able to know what's happening in enough time. Or like a thing that is personally grating to me right now is for DC's Metal, their Batman one-shots, like The Man Who Laughs or Batman the Dawnbreaker or Batman the Red Death. Because these have the fancy metal covers, DC had to go to a press a lot earlier than they normally do. So we had to turn our orders in a lot earlier. And now that the demand is crazy, we can't keep up. And DC has already announced that the rest of these books have sold out before they come out. And it's because, well, we're also in a what I like to call a post-order society. Nobody pre-orders anymore. They all post-order. They add a thing after it comes out, before they've seen it, but after it's already on the shelf. Yeah. Or when it's too late for us to do anything about it, to adjust our orders to meet that demand.
Jermaine was talking about that too, about how it seems to be a trend where people used to be on top of their pull lists more and they would add and drop ahead of time, but now it's like really the last minute or later.
There's too much stuff and nobody can commit to everything at once, and they want to at least be able to read a couple reviews. And like, we don't assume that the majority of our customers use the comics industry resources and the websites and things, but those who do use it religiously, but they want to wait and see what somebody else says on a book before they add it, or they want to at least see it. Like, nobody ever flips through a book and says, oh, I'll add this now. It's always between, like, right before it comes out, after we've printed up the pulls list for the week and before we actually pull the books, it's, oh, can I get that now? When it's all a lot of crossing out and scribbling in, and when it's the hardest for us. That's when people want it.
One other thing that I wanted to talk about, shifting a little bit, is I know you guys have a lot of creator signings.
Yes.
And, I mean, would you mind just sharing some of the people you've had recently, or maybe tease some that are
sure.
coming up?
Coming up, we have Halloween Comic Fest, which is the comics industry's attempt to do a second free comic book day, which we've never participated in because usually we would either do our own Halloween thing or our neighborhood has specific trick-or-treat times for the kids, and it never jives with Halloween Comic Fest, and it still doesn't this year. But This year we have Dave Scheidt, who does the all ages book Wrapped Up, which debuts this week from Lion Forge, and it's an all ages book. And Dave's local, so we're having him come in. We have Daniel Kibblesmith coming in twice at the end of this year, once in November, once in December. In November for his holiday book, Santa's Husband, but in December for Quantum and Woody, he's doing that, the relaunch for that, because he previously did Doorman for Heavy Metal and Valiant High for Valiant, and like a story in the Harley 25th anniversary special. But we've had people anywhere from Dave McKeon, and we've had Cullen Bunn and Brian Hurt in like 7 times for stuff because we love those guys. Matt Kinson been in a bunch, Joelle Jones a few times. But then last March, we did 23 different women creators over the span of the month in an event we called Women's Comics Month because it was Women's History Month, and we just showcased as many local creators as we could. So we try to do every aspect, like the A-listers down to people you've never heard of. Last free comic book day, we always try to have somebody that has a free comic day book out that year. So we had Matt Kent this year. He did the EXO book. It was his first ever free comic book day, and it was very interesting for him. The last few events we've had have all been like it was Batman Day. So we had a cosplayer doing Harley Quinn, and we had local artists, and then we also had Tim Seeley. Like we try to have one name and then people that just do it for the love of doing it.
Cool. And so just logistically speaking, I mean, how do you set this up? How are you finding these, or how are you connecting with these creators?
The internet.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just reaching out to them directly.
Yeah. It just gets cold calling, really. We've had plenty of huge misses. We were attempting to get Grant Morrison, and that didn't work out. We almost had Tom King for Mr. Miracle #1, but that didn't work out. But I'm like, nobody is too big for us to ask, but there's plenty. Like we've had Raina Telgemeier in twice before she broke as big as she is, and deservedly so. Now we're way too small for her.
Oh, really?
You know, we had Kelly Sue DeConnick when she was doing the Marvel book Osborn. Now there's no way we get Kelly Sue DeConnick back. You know, but we love having had people. The signing wall we have behind the front counter is a testament to all the different people we've had. And it's amazing how easy it is to get someone to come in because they do this because they love it, and they want to have the conversations as well. They want to be able to talk to people that love what they're doing. Yeah.
Well, I would imagine, for them, I mean, the creative process can be a solitary one.
Very isolating, yeah.
For the ones who you say are too big now to do this, is it that they're too busy, or do they seem like they're not interested anymore?
Oh, we wouldn't even try again. Okay. Like we, our store is too small. Like just talents that I think that have such mass appeal. Like we would never be able to get a Matt Fraction right now, or definitely not Grant Morrison, like we tried, but there's people we've had in the past that I don't think would. I'm not trying to make it sound bad either way. It's just we're too small for them now.
When you do have people, are you paying them for their time, their expenses, neither, both? How does that work?
We pay the expenses.
Okay.
We'll fly them in. We'll put them up. We'll take them to dinner. We don't pay for time.
Okay. And, I mean, what sort of response do you get from your customers? Are people into it? Do you get big turnouts at these things? Because we've had, we never really did a bunch at Alternate Realities, but the ones that we did, there was one, I wasn't actually present for this, but we had Justin Gray and Jimmy Palmiotti, and this was years ago, though. The signing itself was really not well attended, but, they came out to dinner with the guys, and everyone was so happy, but, the signing itself was not a huge draw.
Events are the bane of our existence because we love doing them, but Chicago doesn't care anymore. And like I said, we had Raina Telgemeier out twice to very low turnouts, and she's massive now. But she was, in our minds, she was massive back then. We've had Noelle Stevenson out twice for Lumberjanes and then for Nimona, and everything we do is diminishing returns. If we do an event that has a great turnout and we try to replicate it, we get like half the attendance the next time. So it's like we've had Mike Norton sign here maybe a dozen times, and it's just a handful of people that come out now. Yet if Mike Norton goes to Third Eye in Annapolis, people camp out overnight to meet him.
Right.
Their events are amazing. We had Charles Soule here and Ryan Brown for
the Curse Words
tour. Yeah.
Yeah, I saw them at all. Yeah.
Yeah, excellent. And we're Ryan's home store, and Charles had never been here before, and we were the second smallest turnout on the tour, I think. And it's like, Chicago, this is huge. Chicago as a city just doesn't care about events anymore. I think that because there's so many comic stores and so many things happening, people just say, I'll go to the next one. Or it's that misguided comic shop loyalty where people think they owe their store loyalty and they can't go anywhere. So I saw an exchange between Charles Soule and somebody who shops at a different store on the other side of town who's like, oh, I wish you'd come into my store. He's like, I'm coming to your city.
Right.
He's like, I can't cheat on my store. It's not cheating because your store is not offering this thing. Whenever like a store in the neighborhood, not neighborhood, but in the city, had Gail Simone or had Jamie McKelvey, or I'm sorry, Kieran Gillen, did we tell our people, oh, you can't go to that? No, we think it's great. We'll never tell you can't go. You don't owe us anything. A good quote from Dal is, the only thing you owe us is the money you've already spent. That's all. You don't owe us, if you decide to cancel your subscription, we'd appreciate you telling us in advance.
Yeah, pick up the books that you've ordered.
Yes, just in the last couple of weeks, we've had two, when we call people like, hey, you don't forget your books. I live in Portland now. I forgot to tell you. Oh, thanks for sticking us with all these books.
Terrific.
Or I tried to come in, but I couldn't make it and I've moved. Sorry.
Yeah.
Thanks. These are books we ordered specifically for you.
With the signings, when it isn't the best turnout, are the creators good sports about it, or do they seem kind of put off?
We've never had anybody be angry about it, and we always look at it as our fault. They always look at it as their fault. Everybody's willing to blame themselves. Like the creators are like, yeah, I just don't have that big of a fan base. Like, no, we didn't get the word out right enough, or whatever, or it's drizzling, so everybody stayed inside today, or it's a degree colder than it was yesterday, or whatever. Like you always look for excuses, but ultimately you think, oh, nobody cares.
It's such a tricky thing. I mean, we could keep going on about this. I don't want to harp on it, but I wonder if part of it is that through social media, people have a level of access to creators that they used to not have at all.
That is exactly a huge part of it, I think. If you follow someone on Twitter and read their tweets, or if amazingly they interact with you at some point, you think, well, we're already friends. I don't need to go meet them. Yeah, I think that internet access is a big part of it.
But I would imagine, it's still worthwhile to do and to attempt, right? Because I think about it even with the things that I do, events and such, or going to conventions, and it's like, even if I get one new person to listen to the podcast,
sure,
it's good.
Yeah, and that's why we do things. We have stopped trying to make money on events because we don't. I mean, when you add up...
I was going to ask if that translates to sales.
When you add up airfare and hotel and meals, and then figure out how many comics you have to sell specifically from that event, like taking away your normal day sales, how much extra you have to do to make that up, we haven't made money on an event in a long time, but we love the exposure. We love being able to say, hey, we had these people out. We love showing pictures saying, look who we had here. Look what they drew on the wall. We like to do a lot of look what you missed.
Yeah, it's
look
part
what
of
you missed.
The culture of the store that you're creating. No, I understand. I think that does make sense. But when the people who do come, do you find that they are your regular customers, or are you pulling in new people? And if they are new people, do any of them stick around and become regulars? No,
they don't stick around because they have their own stores. Okay. We've been here for 10 years. We're not stealing anybody away from anybody else anymore. We've pretty much, I think, reached the maximum number of people that were like. There may be new fans coming in here and there, but like setting up at Comic-Cons and like at Wizard World or C2E2 and being like, look, we have a store that exists. When people have a store, they're not looking to change. And people will go to the worst stores if they're closer.
So where are there opportunities for growth then? Is it more doing online sales or getting your existing customers to add more titles to their pull list?
It's got to be new customers. It's creating new customers. That weren't reading comics before. That's the only growth that we can do. So. And like we hate the idea of cannibalizing our existing customers' monies because they're already spending as much as they can. To get this title, they have to just drop this title. And it's weird to say there's too many choices out, but there's too many comics out. Like we can't carry everything. We've got a couple of dedicated club members who every week give us a list of the books that they want us to get for them because they know we're not going to have them for the shelf, because there's so many smaller companies we just don't give the shelf space to, because now that we've condensed everything, and we have to, ideally your book needs to sell in 7 days for us.
Right. Yeah, creating new customers. Well, I guess that kind of brings us full circle. Early on we talked about Saga, and it's like, how do these people find out about Saga and come in? It's, I guess, finding those other people out there. Through community outreach, things like that. Events with local organizations.
We do a lot of. We set up a lot of libraries and elementary schools and schools, and we just did an event with local Chicago Hopes for Kids mentoring, like these mentors that deal with underprivileged or homeless kids, and they want to start using comics to reach them. So they asked us to come in and talk to their mentors, and to basically people that don't read comics, to pitch them on how to read comics and how to engage with comics, which was actually really kind of fun and easy, because like, how do kids read comics? You give it to them and they open it and they read it. If they know how to read, they'll read it. But these were adults that had never read comics, and adults have a very hard time reading comics if they've never read comics before. They don't know, do I read the word balloon and look at the art? Like, how does it flow? So it's teaching them how to engage with it so they can engage with kids. But I mean, that's a step for the industry as a whole. That's not really doing anything for our store specifically, but it's just going to, in 2 weeks, we're setting up at an education seminar at a local elementary school, just to show parents, like, hey, we're in the neighborhood. These are the kind of things that we have. Reading is great for kids. You want your kids to read. Comics have a very proven success rate for getting reluctant readers into reading. Come on by and see what we have. Because kids walk into Sidekicks and see the room and they think this is not a surprise to them. They think it's great. They love it. They want to be here. But parents are like, I didn't know there were comics for kids. And kids are like, well, why wouldn't there be? Because they didn't know that there shouldn't be. So it's not a surprise to them, because the world is theirs. But it's educating parents on, hey, this is what's available for your kids, and this is what can help them or what they can like. And wouldn't you rather them reading a comic book than play a video game?
I got to tell you, I love what you guys do here, and I've really had a great time chatting with you. I know we could go on and on. There's always so much more to talk about. But is there anything in particular that you wanted to talk about or share about your store that we haven't gotten to?
Well, this is not a surprise to anybody who listens to your podcast, but there's a comic for everybody. No matter who you are or what you do, there's a comic book that you'll love. And it's just a matter of you finding it. And I can't tell you how many times in the past I've gone to people that don't read comics and said, hey, here's this one specific comic. You should read this. You'll love it. And they read it and love it. And I'll say, great, you want to buy the next one? I don't read comics. You do. Everybody reads comics. Comics have been around forever. It's an American art form. I'm always disappointed by how comics are looked at in America versus other countries where they're revered and accepted and encouraged and virtually worshipped. Yet they're an American art form, and we think they're just for kids and that they're dumb. They're not. I've devoted my life to it. I've permanently scarred my body with the idea of comics.
Before I let you go, I know it might be a little too early, but again, as we said, you do have your 10th anniversary coming up. Anything special planned?
No, nothing that we've talked about. We have, the biggest concern for us is that our lease is also up at that point, and we need to find out if we're able to stay in the space or not.
Okay.
As if
yeah, that's a priority.
Yeah. So we're not looking so much, because it might be a grand reopening somewhere,
Gotcha.
And when I say if we're allowed to, I mean our lease says we have to 6 months before the end of the lease say what our intentions are, and we did, and we haven't heard back. So either they don't want us to renew, or they're going to raise the rent too high. And I don't know if you've noticed, but the other spaces in this building we're in, that we've been in for almost 10 years, are empty, and everything that's come has gone. Some of them in the dark of the night just slink out and break leases and whatnot. So I can't imagine our landlord wouldn't want us to stay, since we've been here for 10 years, even though they're not the original landlord, but still.
Have you seen any effect here as a result of the other stores not being here? Like, was there any crossover in terms of foot traffic or anything like that?
They were, since we've been here, it's been everything from 2 different cell phone stores, a payday loans, check cashing place, a vape shop. There's no real.
Yeah. No, I just asked because the strip where Alternate Realities was, that space is still vacant, and we were and still are friendly with the deli owner who was right next door to us. And every time we go in, he's like, he really misses the store because on Wednesdays especially, he did great business that day. Everybody would go in and then they'd go get some lunch.
We don't have any delis around us. I would love a deli around here.
Well, Patrick, thank you so much for sharing your comic shop history with us.
It's been my pleasure, and thank you for doing what you're doing and sharing all the comic shop histories with all your listeners and really spreading the word.
Yeah, no, I love doing it. And, the day job that I have, that's actually what brought me to Chicago. And the 5 years that I've been working there, I've come here 4 times. So
wow.
It's very likely that I'll be back again, and
Excellent.
I'll be sure to stop in the next time I'm in town. So thank you again for being part of this.
Keep reading comics.
Well said. Thank you to everyone who tuned in. Be sure to come back in 2 weeks for Windy City Part 2. We'll be featuring First Aid Comics. And next week, on the other podcast I host, Flat Squirrel Tales Beyond My Comic Shop, we'll be doing our New York Comic Con post-mortem with a special focus on cosplay. So it'll be a lot of fun. Be sure to tune in for that. And then we'll see you back here in 2 weeks for more My Comic Shop history. Until then, as always, don't be a flat squirrel.